My name is Michaela Neal, and I decided to do my lesson on science, and it's for the second grade. The objective is to develop a simple model that mimics the function of an animal in dispersing seeds and pollinating plants. So first, I would ask the students, how are flowers pollinated? How do bees act as pollinators? Are bees the only insects or animals that help pollinate? And then I would do a little demonstration just to get the students interested and excited. And I would have a real flower and a tissue, and this is a perfect time of year to do this. And I would rub this on the tissue, and I would ask the students, do you know what this is? I would say, do you know what the substance is on this paper? And then I would also write the responses down. Do you know what it does? Do you know how flowers are reproduced? And you may even have to explain reproduce because that's a big word for them. And then I would also say, have you ever heard pollination before? And I may use the smartboard to write some of these responses down. That way they have a visual of some of their answers. And then I would start the guided practice, which would be the materials that you would need is brown paper bags. All the students would have a cutout flower that they can collar and then paste on their bag. And then they would also all get a little bee puppet, and they could collar their bee puppet as well. And then we would also need Cheetos. And for this activity, the Cheetos would go inside the bag, and I would encourage the students to eat some of their Cheetos. That way they are gathering lots of the Cheeto dust on their fingers. But I would make sure to say not to lick their fingers, because if they lick them, then they're not going to have any Cheeto dust on them. So once they have eaten some of their Cheetos and they've gathered lots of Cheeto dust on their fingers, I would have them stand up, and they would get to use their bee puppets to fly to each one of their friends' flowers. And as they fly to each one of their friends' flowers, they're feeling the dust on their fingers, and they're gathering dust from their friends' flowers and moving along to each one of them. That's the activity that I would have them do. And then after the activity, I would expand on some of this a little bit more. I would say, what does the brown bag represent? And hopefully the students would say a flower. And what does your hand represent? And they would say a bee. And what happened when you touched your friend's flowers? And they would say, well, I got some dust on my flowers. And then I would further explain that the Cheeto dust on their fingers represented the pollen. And then whenever the students touched their friend's flowers, the dust rubbed off onto the flowers. And through that, they were demonstrating the process of pollination. And through pollination, bees gather pollen on their legs, and they fly to different flowers. And when they fly to the different flowers, they transfer that pollen to the different flowers. And this facilitates the reproduction of plants. So, and then I may ask the students things like, do you think only bees pollinate flowers? And can you think of any other animals or insects that pollinate flowers? Do you think flowers are the only plants that are pollinated? Then for the independent practice, I would have the students write a little reflection about what they learned during the activity. In the reflection, I would make sure that I saw that they were able to explain the process of pollination. So I would look for them to be using words like pollen in their paper and pollination instead of Cheeto dust, for example. I would want them to score at least a 35 on a 50-point rubric in areas like grammar. Were they able to explain the process of pollination? Were they able to use the key words? And was it in the correct order? Did they know that it was as the bee flew to each one of their flowers, whether they were able to explain that process or not? And for the differentiation for my lesson, I would write everything that I could on the board, so that way all the students had a visual on the board for it. And then I would also use this book, it's called Bees and Butterflies, and it would be great for visual learners because it's got lots of bright, pretty colors, and it explains the process of pollination. So I would use this book to help visual learners. For the kinesthetic and the tactile learners, this activity would be great for them because they would be up, moving around. They would be rubbing their fingers together because of the Cheeto dust or the pollen. So they would really get to feel it and have a hands-on approach with learning how pollination works. And then with oral learners, I would use this video. It's found on YouTube, and it's called Pollination Rock, and it's just a little song, so I'll let you hear just a little piece of it.
Pollination of a flowering plant. It's done by insects, water, wind, by dogs and birds and man. Pollination must occur to get another plant.
I'm a bee crawling in a flower because the flower petal I see.
Okay, so I would use that for oral learners, and that's it.